everyone. Yes, I do mean you. It's me, Silver Daddy. Are you ready for another exciting adventure, aka trip or Trippin' with me? We're about to discover and share some amazing life stories. If I take a few sudden tangent turns along the way, don't worry, because I'll find our way back. Come on, climb aboard and buckle up, because we are ready to start another great episode of
Trippin' with Silver Daddy.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Trippin' with Silver Daddy, and we are finally here, or there, whichever. We're finally at my number one pick and the number one rated island. Drum roll, please. And that island is St. Croix. Okay, time out. I know what you're saying. Well, St. Croix, you already talked about the U.S. Virgin Islands. Yes, I did. But I have to talk about St. Croix separately from St. Thomas and St. John and rate them differently. Because I did live there. I lived there for about 5-6 years on island. So I really got to know the island extremely well. And that's why I broke it apart. And that's probably why I got the highest rating. Because it is my highest rated island. Great memories, great things to talk about. So we would say in St. Croix is where history meets paradise. There's a lot of historical things about St. Croix. And one of the things we talk about is maybe who is some of the most famous people who are from St. Croix. Well, you know what? That's a really hard one to determine. We can talk about one of our historical fathers of the United States. Alexander Hamilton actually lived in St. Croix during his boyhood. Something a lot of people don't realize. So when he was young, his parents separated, and he lived with his mother on St. Croix. So his younger years and his early adolescence was all done in St. Croix, and many people say his experiences in St. Croix really helped him determine his economical thoughts about United States and just about society in general. So he is one of the most famous historical figures. And then we would say Crucian Rum. Okay, yes, Crucian Rum is not a person. But let me tell you, if you're on island, Crucian Rum is like your best friend. Crucian Rum is incredible. I mean, I was not a rum drinker until I got there. And their apple rum, oh my God, with Diet Coke, it will convert anyone. But Crucian Rum has been around on the islands for over 70 years. And it's still made in the more historical old way of brewing rum. And that's one of the coolest things. Yes, they have a lot of new like spiced rums and flavored rums, but they are just known for their rum. And their rum has won some major awards. One of the coolest thing is the rum factory where they make it is like old. So the rum tours are incredible. Not only do you get to do a lot of tasting, but rum's a big thing. Now, not to like scare anyone off, when I lived there, you could buy a bottle of rum for about the same price as a gallon of milk. Just saying. So a lot of people had to make some choices in life. Do I want rum or do I want dairy? And since many of us are allergic to dairy, we went with Crucian Rum. And that's why the island's so happy all the time. Well, let's talk a little bit more about the historical stuff on the island. because currently St. Croix is under the United States Virgin Islands and flies the United States flags. But St. Croix has a very interesting historical past, starting with the Dutch in the 1600s. The Dutch were the first ones who colonized and claimed St. Croix as their own, and that was back in the 1600s. Then came the Brits, the English came, and they were also present during this same time period, 1600s. So you had the Dutch and the British always fighting over each other. And then the French came. So yes, now the French decide they want the island. The French claim that it's their island. So now we have three people claiming the island. Then after the French, oh, here comes the Spanish. The Spaniards were all there. And the Spaniards actually came in the mid-1600s. And they actually started with planting of the sugarcane fields, were the Spanish. Well, the Spanish didn't keep control the whole time because the Knights of Malta moved in. And the Knights of Malta, they actually claimed St. Croix in the late 1600s. I don't know where in the hell the Knights of Malta came from, but they came somewhere and took over the island. And then the Danish came. And the Danish, they actually gained control of pretty much the entire island now. And the Danish really pushed the sugarcane industry and started building the sugarcane plantations and the big towers that are known for St. Croix. So the Danish then started to come. Then in 1917, the United States purchased St. Croix along with St. John and St. Thomas from the Danish. So yeah, there was 7 countries that all flew their flags over St. Croix at one time. But let me tell you about probably the most famous person that was more current. Do you know who the most famous person that I would say lived in St. Croix was? Hey everyone, it's me, Silver Daddy, and I keep telling you, I'm going to be at Blether, and that's July 26th, 27th, 28th. And what's Blether, you're asking? Blether is the Bear Leather weekend up in Mobile, Alabama. So it's time to get my leather on. Now, my question to you, do you like this one on me? Do you think this would look good? I'm at Leatherworks in Fort Lauderdale. If you're buying leather, this is where you have to come. Do you think this one, or do you like the more just the X? Hey, I need help. Well, they have this one. Nope, because I don't know where that bottom strap goes to. I'm afraid of that one. So tell me which of these two you like. The X one or this one? Leave your comments below. Bye. On Friday, July 26th, is the Red Light, Green Light Underwear Dance Party featuring DJ Robbie Kerrigan. July 27th, Roughnecks on the Rig will be having the 29th annual Mr. Gulf Coast Bear Contest, and that's going to be hosted by AJ McKay. When you come up to Mobile Blether Weekend, make sure you make your reservations today at the host hotel, Hampton Inns and Suites. It's only $139 a night. So who would we say is probably really the most famous person that lived in St. Croix? Well, that would be Marlene O'Hare. Marlene O'Hare was a beautiful redhead silver queen from the movies in the 1950s. She was one of the most famous leading ladies back in the 50s. And she lived in St. Croix for many of the years. Well, Marlene also married Brigadier General Charles Blair. And he was an Air Force general, brigadier general, and they lived in St. Croix. And Charles Blair, he spent about $10,000 and he bought his first, what was known as a seaplane, and it was the Grumman Goose. They called it the Gray Goose. And he started the airline's Antilles Air Service, or airboats, Antilles Airboats. And he started this with only $10,000. He bought his first plane. He had a whole staff of 5, and they would fly back and forth between St. Croix and St. Thomas. He grew this Antilles airboats to like a fleet of 27, and they became the world's largest seaplane operator right in St. Croix. And Charles flew many of these flights. He also was known for setting records for the longest distance of the seaplane, the fastest from point A to point B in a seaplane. So he was also kind of like this daredevil that was setting these world records. And Marlene and Charles would actually take seaplanes all the way to Ireland, Marlene's home country. And they would get there by flying the airplane all the way up the East Coast to Nova Scotia, spend some time there, and go Nova Scotia over to Ireland. People in Nova Scotia became very fascinated with Marlene O'Hare because of being on the silver screen and being this famous actress. Well, they both lived in the St. Croix area. Now, what's really amazing is Marlene, she actually owned a magazine, and it was the Virgin Islander. And she owned this from like 1976 to about 1980, and she finally sold it to USA Today. But Marlene, when I say she was a leading lady, Marlene brought a lot of famous people to St. Croix. It's not that she brought them there. They came there on their own will because they wanted to come visit Marlene. We're talking about John Wayne, Dean Martin, Bing Crosby, Fred Astaire, all these leading men and women, Lauren Bacall, they would all come down to St. Croix and stay with Marlene and Charles. And St. Croix actually became this paradise for celebrities where they would all come. So much so that Carambola Resort is an original Rockefeller resort. The Rockefellers only built so many resorts in the world, and there's one in St. Croix on the North Shore called Carambola. It's beautiful. The first time I was there, I would swear I was just in Hawaii. And what's so cool about it, there is actually a wall dive right out in the bay of Carambola. So I would go there scuba diving. And I'm telling you, it's one of the more beautiful resorts in the Caribbean. Okay, back to Marlene and Charles. So Charles, basically, he was doing a lot of flights, and he was actually flying, and he died. He crashed the Grey Goose, and 3 people and him actually died. And that was in September of like 76. I gotta check my facts, everyone. Yeah, 1978. September of 1978, he crashed and he actually died. Marlene just passed away not too long ago. Their house is still in St. Croix. It sits up on the hill above Christiansted. it went into some disarray, but now they're redoing it and refurbishing and changing it because they were so historical to the island that it's now going to be like a tourist attraction for people. So I would probably say Marlene O'Hare and Charlie Blair, they were probably two of the most famous people that lived in St. Croix. Now, what destroyed St. Croix? The thing that caused probably the most devastation to the economy and to the island of St. Croix was in September, between September 15th and 22nd of 1989. And during this time period, hundreds of thousands of people throughout the Caribbean and United States were being evacuated to safety because of Hurricane Hugo. Hugo was the strongest hurricane in the Northeast Caribbean by over some 10 years. The hurricane proved to be the most destructive hurricane in Guadeloupe. We've talked about Guadeloupe in the past. It destroyed 100% of the banana crops in Guadeloupe and the palm tree for palm oil. All was destroyed. And over 3,000 houses lost their roofs, and it displaced over 35,000 people on that island. Next, it hit Montserrat. I never talked about Montserrat because I've never been there, but it's an island I would still want to go to. It has an active volcano on the island that still is blowing out ash. Trust me, in St. Croix, it's an island real close to St. Croix, we would get the damn ash if the winds were blowing right, and it would get all over your damn car. But I want to go see there because the volcano leveled a whole city area that now they're doing ecotourism that you can go there. But Montserrat, it was the most expensive hurricane, the most costly hurricane in the island, and it brought down the entire power grid on the entire island. Next, it came over to St. Croix. There's actually a movie made about this. I think it's called The Longest Night. What's amazing about St. Croix is that only 3 people died, but 90% of the buildings were either unroofed or destroyed and left unlivable. 90%. What is also amazing, the whole entire town of Frederiksted, and that's where I lived, up in the hills above Frederiksted. It's on the west coast of the island. Most of the downtown area was destroyed. And here's what's so sad about it, and why I say it really caused some problems in St. Croix of the Virgin Islands. Frederiksted is one of the 2 original towns. And St. Croix, basically, the story goes, there was 2 Danish sons. One was Fred and one was Chris, and they separated and lived in 2 parts of the island. You know, one became Frederiksted, and I think Sted is home in Danish, so it's like Fred's home, and the other one was Christiansted, Chris's home. Well, Frederiksted took a big part of the brunt of the problem, and many buildings were destroyed. What made it very difficult for the town of Frederiksted, a lot of these buildings were actually deemed historical. And because they were historical, that meant anything that they would rebuild had to be replacing it to look just like what it was. the cost of that became too much for the people who owned the property. So a lot of parts of Frederiksted we would just call the ruins, because the buildings are still in ruin, because the people who own the land do not have the money to replace the building to make it historically look like what it was prior. So that's why when you go through Frederiksted versus Christiansted, you see a lot of like buildings that are just walls and all that, but nothing really can be done unless they're going to rebuild it to look the same. And the people who own it don't have that money. Now, I don't know if they resolved that issue since I've been gone, which I hope. They just kind of resolved the issue and let people start rebuilding there. But this hurricane, basically in St. Croix, and St. Croix in Puerto Rico caused over $1 billion in damages. The wind gust in St. Croix was 168 miles per hour. That's 270 kilometers per hour. So there was all kinds of widespread damage. Puerto Rico, there was about 8 or 9 people that were killed, and they had about 28,000 people that became homeless. This is what really caused the economic collapse of St. Croix, because before this, back in the 50s and 60s and into the 70s, Marlene O'Reilly was there bringing in all these famous people. And the place was thriving. Now the hurricane came and destroyed 90% of the buildings. Not only that, there's an island off the north side of St. Croix called Buck Island. Buck Island was known and had one of the largest reefs around the island. And the hurricane destroyed the entire reef system. When I went diving there, it looked like something almost like what you saw after 9/11. You just had all this coral that was all like stacked and intertwined with each other. And it just had this kind of like brown moss looking stuff all over it. It was really sad to go diving there and see this, to know at one time this was one of the larger reefs in the Caribbean. So this is probably what destroyed the economy in St. Croix for the longest time. Yeah, I know. But let me tell you something else about St. Croix. Hey everyone, I'm going to let you in on the Silver Daddy secret. Where does Silver Daddy get his hair, beard, and skin taken care of on his face? I go to JT Cuts Academy. The reason I go there, the owner, JT, has 2 very successful barbershops in Fort Lauderdale, and he has actually won the award for the best barber in the area. Now, Silver Daddy used to be a teacher, and I also wrote training for airlines, and I did a lot of training. So I'm really a big believer in helping people learn to become better. There is no better way than to get a great haircut or get a shave, beard taken care of by students who are learning but have put the hours in and practicing. And they are under the guidance of some of the best instructors in the area. I love going into JT Cuts Academy because 1, I know I'm going to look out my best, and 2, I'm going to be helping students get credit so they can graduate and have their own life. It's a win-win for everyone. Check out JT Cut Academies. Call them for times that they're cutting. So St. Croix is the largest of the 3 Virgin Islands. And each of the Virgin Islands was kind of set up a little differently. But St. Croix, what makes it so interesting is one, the Danish actually ruled there from like the late 1600s, or no, they actually were in rule 1700s, like 1730s to 1917 when they sold it. And they were really big on bringing the sugar industry to the actual island. And there's some really great sugar mills that where they're up on top of the hills, and a lot of them are preserved and they're beautiful. Some of these sugar mills are large and they have weddings at them. They're really beautiful. But there's a lot of Danish agriculture, and I actually worked for one of the original Danish families. There's like 4 or 5 original Danish families on island, and I happened to work for one of them at a resort. I'll tell you about that in just a second. But the other thing is that Buck Island I was just talking about, that people would go diving around, the coral's starting to come back, but there's a lot of sea turtles around it. There's a lot of seagrass out there. And the green sea turtles tend to be all over that area. Buck Island is interesting and historical in its own way. There's several nations in the Caribbean that have a Buck Island. St. Thomas has its own Buck Island. St. Croix has a Buck Island. The reason being is what Buck Islands were is where they took male slaves who they felt were, they couldn't control them. They were uncontrollable slaves, and they were called bucks. A male slave was a buck. And they would take these slaves that were causing so much problem that the owners couldn't control, and they would just dump them off on this island. They didn't have prisons for the slaves. They just took them to this island where they couldn't get off of, took them there, released them, and left them fend for themselves or die there. So there's like some, dark side to these Buck Islands, and very historical too. Then you have, Crucian Christmas. Oh my God. Crucian Christmas. Reason we call it Crucian Christmas? It's St. Croix's carnival. And it starts with the playing of music through the streets, the Christmas carols. Like vans blaring Christmas carols. Christmas carnival in St. Croix starts right after Christmas Day and runs into January. And it's in Frederiksted, where I live, down below it. And they set up a whole Christmas carnival village. And there's parades from Christiansted, one side of the island, all the way over to Frederiksted. Every day there's activities. And the carnival goes on. It's just like food and drinks and games and for the family and kids. It's a huge thing right after Christmas time. So that's like a really huge thing in St. Croix. What else St. Croix known for? Naturally, Oprah has a house on St. Croix, the Oprah Getaway Island estate. She has a huge location in St. Croix. And then we talked about, the Hollywood connections to St. Croix. And it's not just Marlene. So if anyone's ever seen the movie Shawshank Redemption, if you remember the very end scene where he's walking down this long stretch of sand, well, that is in St. Croix. And that area is well known because it is one of the world's largest nesting ground of the leatherback sea turtles. The leatherback sea turtles are the ones that are like 6 feet big. They're like as big as a Volkswagen Bug. These are the giant sea turtles, the leatherbacks. And they come and they nest in this long stretch of sand area. And it is closed off to all people. From about May, they start laying eggs. It's like 60 days. They start hatching anytime from late July into September. So they'll come from May to maybe end of June, 2 months. And then they start hatching May, June, July, like late July, August through September. So basically Memorial Day, at least Memorial Day, all the way through Labor Day, this whole entire beach area, Sandy Point, it's called, is closed off to people. Now you can actually go at night, sign up, and go there because turtles are hatching every night starting in July, and you can be a part of the group that actually counts the turtles. So they actually do scientific study and counting the turtles. What's unfortunate, people still eat these turtle eggs. So there's poachers, even on St. Croix. So that's why the area is totally closed down. Now, so Shawshank Redemption was filmed there. The Curious Case of Benjamin Button was filmed there. And our seaplane was Seabourn. We actually did one of the Bachelor filmings there. And I was there when they were filming it, and it's when they actually flew in all the ladies for the Bachelor, and they all got off the seaplane. The seaplane docked right on the beach at the resort, and they all got off, got into the water, and walked up the beach for like the first time they were there. And here's the funny story. My friend, and she worked for us, I actually hired her, Brooke, who is simply beautiful and still beautiful to this day. Shout out to Brooke. Beautiful person, beautiful heart, beautiful appearance and everything. She was way down the beach with us, and the director came over to us and said, "Excuse me, who is that blonde down the beach?" We looked and we're like, "Oh, that's Brooke." They're like, "Can you get her off the beach?" We're like, "Yeah." He goes, "She's better looking than our cast members." We had to get Brooke off the beach. Brooke, she's an incredible person. So, hey, but there's even more about St. Croix I want to tell you about. Let's see. Talked about that. Let's talk about the crazy side of St. Croix. I want to tell you about my friend Jasmine, but we all just call her Jazzy because she is such a cool person. And you know, she has been doing yoga for over 10 years. And for 6 years, she's actually been a certified yoga instructor. And what makes her so special, she gives great one-on-one personal lessons, or she can do group lessons. If you're like me and need to work on your flexibility as you're getting older, or, you just need to find that tranquil, calm place to be, Jazzy can help you. I know she's the right person for you. Hey, her information is above. It's on Instagram. Check her out at Suffocating Love Zero. So I want to tell you a little bit about the crazy part of St. Croix. St. Croix has a lot of crazy events and a lot of cool things. They have what they call a cowgirl, the annual St. Croix Cowgirls competition. And this is kind of unique for the islands because it's women competing in a lot of different events like horseback riding. Yes, horseback riding in St. Croix. St. Croix, as I told you, is the largest of the Caribbean islands. And it was kind of set up as the agricultural and industrial island, where St. Thomas was the tourist, the shopping area, and St. John was nature with the national park. But St. Croix really was more set up as like that's where the dairy farms were. Oh, the goats everywhere. I mean, if you have a traffic in St. Croix, it's a goat problem, let me tell you. The only time we ever have traffic was 2 times. When the goats were out on the road, or when at the time it was Vice President Biden, he had a house there that he either bought or rent, and he would fly in, and that would stop all traffic. Other than that, we didn't have problems. But they have this contest, and then they actually have the mango contest in June. I took first place as a side dish my very first year in St. Croix. Just to let you know, that's my cooking. Yeah, I did a jalapeno mango coleslaw. And it won. So that's my claim to fame down there. What are some of the other crazy things? Oh, the diving there. Crazy ass diving. Like some of the best diving in the world. That's actually why I moved there. So you have wall dives. And if you don't know what a wall dive is, a wall dive is where you swim out and the shore goes straight down. Like straight down. So all of a sudden you're swimming out. It's only like 25 feet deep. And then it goes straight down 3,000 feet. When you swim over the wall, everything goes from light looking, and then all of a sudden you're over this area and you look down and you see nothing but this deep, dark blue. And that's when your mind starts playing games, because the first thing you think of is, damn, some big ass shark's going to be coming up out of there. And you know what? It's true. Because in the evening, that's where all the giant hammerheads hang out. We're talking 8, 10-foot hammerhead sharks. Now, hammerheads aren't the most dangerous shark, but they're ranked, I think, number 3 on shark attacks with humans. They don't kill as many people, but they bite a lot of people. It's because, hammerheads have their eyes way out here. They have terrible vision. They can't see shit. Everything's sonar. So if something's big in front of them, hey, that's a big-ass tuna. I'll take a bite. And then they spit it out and like, oh, I don't like the taste of that. Well, that just happened to be part of your leg. So not like they're trying to attack you. They just think you're food. And then after they bite, they realize, oh, I don't like this. And they leave you alone. But you're already got a chunk out of you. They're ranked up there is, I think, the third, like number 3 on attacks on humans. So you got the wall dive, but then you got the pier dive. Well, first of all, that wall dives I'm talking about, the Cane Bay wall dive, it is ranked, it's like a bucket list dive for divers. It's usually in the top 10 dives in the world for people to go do. Then the pier dive, the pier is ranked in the top 10 pier dives in the world. Very shallow, but there's the old pier, and it's still there. And it's filled with some of the largest sponge corals and different types of corals, and there's all these eels, moray eels, and there's the pygmy seahorses. Oh my God, you have so many different types of fish out there, and it's just beautiful, and it's only like 25 feet of water. What that means to us as divers, the shallower the water, the longer you can stay underneath. So if it's only 25 feet, you may be able to stay down for like an hour. If it would be like you're going to go 50, 60 feet, you may only be staying under for like 30 minutes. Because the deeper you go, the more oxygen you use. But it's shallow and it's beautiful. And the other reason you want to do that dive, even snorkeling around there. Because when you're in shallower water, the sunlight shows all the different colors. As you go deeper in water, the colors change. Even though the fish may be red, but when it's 50 feet lower, it doesn't look red. It's going to look blue, because blue is the last color scheme that you see in water. So diving is really cool there too. That's some of the crazy things. Oh, God, what else is some of the crazy things? Oh, I have so much I could talk about. I think I do talk about it. I have it down. I know I have so many things in my notes that I want to talk about. I want to talk real fast about some of the top tourist things that you can do, and I'm just going to mention them because a lot of them I've already talked about. Like one of the top tourism things is Buck Island. You can go to Buck Island. You can go snorkeling around all that reef that I talked about. Christiansted, the city itself, wonderful old Danish architecture, beautiful, and some great restaurants, and there's the fort there. Now, for years, they used to have one of the hardest Ironman triathlons there, which I heard has been canceled, which I hate to hear that. But that used to start and end at the fort. They have jumps. Jumps are like parades that they have. Not as big as like a carnival, but they have the people on stilts. I can't remember the name of that. Frederiksted, the other town. That's where I talked about the ruins, the very old part of town. That's where the pier is, and the pier, they sometimes have festivals and parties on the piers. That's where the cruise ships port. Now, it was known back in the day, many years ago, because I talked about that wall dive, how deep the water is. So a lot of submarines used to be between St. Thomas and St. Croix. And back in the day, it would not be unusual for a submarine coming to port in St. Croix. I also talked about, if it's the right time of the year, going to Sandy Point. That's where the leatherback turtles are. That's over by the west side, Frederiksted. Let me tell you, I'm going to talk a little bit about it, I hope. Frederiksted has some of the most beautiful sunsets. It's on the west side. So you need to definitely go there. Salt River. Salt River is very famous. Salt River it's actually a national park now. And the reason it's a national park, what people don't realize, everyone talks about Christopher Columbus. Like the first place Columbus, discovered America, discovered this, the DR. They all talk about that. But actually, Salt River is documented as the very first place Christopher Columbus came to. Now, the problem was he came to this bay that he thought was a river, and it's not. It's just really a bay that goes inland. They call it Salt River. He landed there, he got there, but no one got off the boat because there was Crucian natives shooting arrows at him. It was also the first place where someone was killed in Christopher Columbus's crew by a native, by a Crucian. The Crucians don't mess around. If they don't like you, you're going to know about it. But this was the first place Columbus actually came, saw land in in the New World, but he never got off the boat because they kept attacking him. Just to say. And then I also talked about Sandy Point, where the leather turtles and all that is. Okay, so those are some of the typical tourism things. Now, what I think St. Croix, I can talk about my favorite tourism things to do there. And I want to talk about food. St. Croix is known for food, people. Oh my God. St. Croix, actually, they have a lot of festivals. I already talked about Carnival. They have one of the best food and wine festivals in the world. It's usually ranked in the top 10 food and wine festivals in the entire world. Yes. And this is in April. It's incredible. Remember I talked about the rum factories? They actually open up these warehouses and they serve food and have things in these warehouses with all this rum. So they're pairing rum with food. There's beautiful estates on the island and they have special dinners at them. They're all over. It's all over the island. It is one of the most incredible events you can go to. I'm telling you, I've been to it. I love it. I would go back in a second. One year I did in the Crucian rum place, and I did one down at Cane Bay too, where they were showing cooking skills. There's like the stars from the Food Network are there, all kinds of people. Very important. I would go. Definitely do that. But I want to tell you about just some food that people wouldn't tell you about. My favorite places. So there's the Lorraine Chicken Shack. This damn little chicken shack, they do rotisserie chickens. They do a couple thousand a day. You used to be able to just go up there after work, buy a whole chicken for like $5-6, not wait in line, ready, get some sides. Some of the best chicken. It's like cooked all day over an open fire. Until Martha Stewart came to town. And damn it, if Martha Stewart didn't have to write about the Lorraine Chicken Shack. And as soon as she wrote about this, how great this Lorraine Chicken Shack was, there were lines of people. It took forever to get your chicken. But it's still damn good chicken. El Sol Bar and Restaurant. This is a Dominican place. Oh my God. Their steaks are incredible. And they do, what was that called? Chicken chuck or something. They just take chicken and cut it into like 20 little pieces and deep fry it in this batter. And you just kind of pick it up and use your hand. It might be a part of a wing or a part of a whatever. It's all cut up different ways. So good. But their steaks are so good. That's up on top of the hill in the center of the island. And it's like overlooking what was the Hess foundry. Oh, did I tell you? There's an oil refinery in St. Croix. When I was there, it was the largest oil refinery in the Western Hemisphere is in St. Croix. It used to be the Hess refinery, but then the Chinese bought it, naturally. But they still refine oil there. That's why it's so funny. Gas in St. Croix is cheap because of this oil refinery. There's some type of laws or something. We get really cheap gas. Like it would be $3 a gallon cheaper there than other islands. Let's say you have Savant. Oh, Savant is like, that's a very upscale restaurant. The Beachside Cafe. Sandcastles. Let me tell you about Sandcastles. Sandcastles was right next door to another place. Sandcastles has wonderful food and a great view of the sunset. But Sandcastles has something else more important. And it is, drum roll. Hey everyone, get ready because it's going to be a flocking good time. Because guess what? Flock Fest is about to be here. It's July 4th through 7th. But Flock Fest is more than just this huge event on the beach in Fort Lauderdale. You know, you have Flock the Block, you have Flock Fest beach parties, there's Flock Fest Splash, there's all kinds of events. The only way you can be up to date is to actually go to flockfestevents.org and you can check out all the great things that's going on. This event is so important to the community because Flockfest actually donates their profits to many different organizations, like the Wilton Manors Business Association. They also donate to the Pet Project, to Prism, to the Broward House. There's so many different organizations. Safe Schools of South Florida, Outshine, PAL. There's so many organizations that benefit from Flockfest. So you need to go to flockfestevents.org and get your tickets now. Silver Daddy's going to be there. Why Sandcastles is so important? In a nutshell, at one time, Sandcastles was owned by the Benedict family. And when I moved to St. Croix, at first a lot of things didn't go my way. And then I met Paul Benedict. And it was a crazy story. We met at 4th of July at Sandcastles, at their bar, and I just happened to say soda pop, and he made fun of me, and he said, "Where are you from, the Midwest?" He goes, "Are you from Ohio?" And I said, "Yes." Only to find out we both lived in Cincinnati for a time period, and we both played in the same volleyball league. And the funny thing was, I went there to teach diving, and when I got there, the place told me they didn't have a position for me. So I'm now on island with nothing. And I met Paul and the Benedicts, and they actually owned the resort next door. And that their resort is incredible. Cottages by the sea. And this whole section of the island once belonged to his grandparents and all that. The Benedicts was one of the original families, Danish families on island. And they were super good to me. Super good. If it wasn't for the Benedict family and helping me out, I don't know how I would have ever survived. I ended up working for Paul at Cottages by the Sea, started meeting some great people, which then led me to meet Ethel Rich. Shout out to Ethel Rich. Ethel actually worked for Marlene O'Hara, and Brigadier Charles Blair worked for Antilles Airboat. She was now a head of human resources for Seabourn Airlines. I met her through her brother that was staying there. They invited me in. Lo and behold, I become a director of training for an airline that I didn't have much experience in. I had none, but they believed in me. And we did some remarkable things to people that worked at Seabourn. And if it wasn't for Paul Benedict, his family, Ethel Rich, there's a lot of things that would never have happened in my life where it took me to all these islands. This is how I went to so many islands and got to meet a lot of distinguished and impressive people like prime ministers, directors of tourism. So I got to do a lot of cool things. But one of the coolest things was talking to Mr. Benedict when he was alive. Because Cottages by the Sea, they're all these individual little cottages that were all built by hand by Mr. Benedict after he came home from World War II. And it's right on the beach. And he built all these by hand. I mean, there's one that's just built out of all shells, conch shells. Remember how I talked about Hurricane Hugo and 90% of the buildings were destroyed? That's true. Not one of the buildings at Cottages by the Sea was destroyed. And they were all built by Mr. Benedict, who didn't have experience as a builder. The man was just so talented. And where I was blessed, I got to meet him and Carol, his wife, towards the end of their stage of life. And I worked nights as the night manager at the place. And I would sit outside waiting for clients to check in, and Mr. Benedict would tell me some of the most wonderful stories about growing up on the island, about the island, things that people didn't know, the ghost of the island. Oh my God, just sitting there at night listening to his stories. He's a very special person. And because of him is why I like doing shows and interviewing people and telling their stories. Because his story is a special story and people need to know about it. Just kind of wanted to share that. But I also want to share my favorite things to do on island. Everyone, it's me. And I'm at my favorite place. Majestic Car Wash. Because look, There's my Blue Beauty coming out from her weekly bath. I love this place. I keep telling you, if you live in Florida, this is where you need to get your car washed. And not only that, they got a special they're starting. If you buy 6 car washes, you get 4 free. This is a Mother's Day and Father's Day special. Buy 6, get 4 free. Come in. You need to come here to Majestic Car Wash in Fort Lauderdale on A1A. I'm sorry, no, on US 1. We're not on A1A. We're on US 1. I'm a little lost. But that is my car. And now they're rubbing it down. The inside's clean. It smells good. I'm just telling you. Buy your mother or father a great gift. Get their car washed where Silver Daddy gets his. Bye. Okay, so I got all the emotional stuff out of the way talking about Mr. Benedict. I want to tell you, my favorite thing to do on the island, there's a couple. One, you have to take the Jeep tour to the tidal pools. Now, the first time I went to the tidal pools, I hiked it. You can actually take a trail and hike it from Carabola Resort or doing the Jeep trails. The Jeep drives down this damn road. It is, I'll tell you one thing, it's bouncy as hell. I actually did one of my first radio shows from St. Croix on this Jeep tour. Tried to do the show from in the Jeep. There is no way. We were bouncing all over each other. I was with Gene Paul and a couple other guys. It was so much fun. When you get to the very bottom to the ocean, it's nothing but these really round black rocks. And it's so cool because when the tide comes in, these rocks rub against each other and just makes this incredible sound. And as the tide goes out, it makes that same sound. But all the rocks are, they're like 2-3 inches, but they're all smooth and rounded. From the continuously grinding of these rocks that were volcanic in nature. And then they have the tidal pools, which basically they flood in high tide. So you got to kind of know your tides, when the tides are. Because if it's a real high tide, you're not going to be able to have fun in the pools. So when the high tide goes out, it leaves these big pools of water. There's big volcano rock behind you. And in these pools are fish and starfish and seahorses. It's a really cool, magical place. It is probably my number one thing that I would suggest for people to do. You have to go find whoever's doing the Jeep tours to there. Wear very sturdy shoes to walk in. You go past some beautiful sugar mills that are old. And there's even you'll go past abandoned vehicles that tried to make it down there and they just got stuck. No one's coming down there to pick them up. I'll tell you that much. Then when you go over to the west side or the east side of the island, you're going to see what they call the Pink Castle. It's the castle on St. Croix. It's not really painted pink, but it gives off this pinkish look during sunset. And this is, I want to make sure I get the name right, so it's in my notes, everyone. This is the property of Countess Nadia Farber. And it was built in the 1980s, and it features a Moorish architectural influence, including archways, decorated, a lot of detail, and the castle is quite large. It boasts over 9,500 square feet. Now, the Countess doesn't live there anymore, but they rent it out for weddings now, a lot of cool things. But also right over in the same area, so we're talking the very east side, you have Udall Point. Udall Point is actually the most, I was going to say it's the most eastern point in the United States, and that's not true. Because the most eastern point in the United States is actually an island in Alaska. It's very east. It's eastern than Maine and all that. And there's the 2000 monument built there. And it was built in a way that the first sunlight of the year 2000 came through the monument. Really cool area. It's high on a point, and it overlooks Buck Island is out there. But what's really cool is there's a parking area, and you can take a hike down to Isaac and Jack Bay. Isaac and Jack Bay, little bit of a hike, nothing down there. No bathrooms, no water. You got to take everything in, and you better bring everything out. It is the most beautiful beach. Snorkeling is incredible there. You may only see one or two other people that hiked all the way down there. And don't be offended if they want to get nude and go swimming. You know, it's a natural thing to do on the islands. But it is just an incredible hike down to Jack's Bay. The sand is so beautiful. It is just like the most incredible thing. I don't know. I love St. Croix. No other place that I've been. But I do want to, and I met some of the most incredible people that mean a lot to me still to this day. I know none of them probably will ever hear this, but I do want to bring it up. First, I met, friends, I call them the Joes. It was Joe and Joe. They were the most endearing people, the most loving people. They were two gay older men, both named Joe, so we called them the Joes. They actually moved up here to Fort Lauderdale, and I saw them up in Fort Lauderdale, but I haven't seen them in a long time. Let's see. I already mentioned Paul Benedict and his family. I'm very blessed to have them in my life. Angie, I consider Angie still one of my closest friends. We still talk, not as much as I would like, but she keeps me grounded. And if she ever sees me post anything on Facebook that she thinks something's wrong, oh my God, my phone's ringing and it's Angie. Ritzy! Oh. Bleep that out. Are you okay? So yeah, pretty interesting. Let's see, Karis. Karis was like when I worked at the seaplane for the first couple of years. We were both directors. She was like, it seemed like her and I were like arch enemies type. She was over operations. I was over a lot of other things. And at first we never did get along. And then later as things changed, I discovered how knowledgeable Karis was and how she had such a beautiful heart and such a good person, such a great mother. And she really cared about a lot of people. And when I first started with Seabourn, I was always worried about getting ahead, being the best, doing all that. And it caused a lot of, I think, conflict with me and Karis. So I guess I publicly want to apologize to Karis for any problems I ever caused her. Because I actually learned more things from Karis at Seabourn than anyone. So, doubt she'll ever hear this. That's okay. John the biker. John still calls me. John's just crazy. John is the most knowledgeable man when it comes to a lot of things and maintenance, mechanics, and everything about planes and how to do it and how FAA works. John was one of those very, I felt, stern type guys. And when I was at Seabourn, I was like really in the closet. I was afraid of so many of the guys that worked there. Very afraid, because I was afraid they would just I would never be accepted for who I am. John accepted me. John still reaches out and gives me shit. John still sends me inappropriate things that I don't want to see. But I love John. John is a great person. And then you have Omer and Dave, who was actually, when I was hired, were running the company. And they actually believed in me, and it made a big difference. And I did talk about Miss Ethel, who, gave me a shot. And she actually, I would call her Miss Seaborn. Everyone loves Miss Ethel. And then you have Gary the Evil One, who destroyed the whole company. I'll leave it at that. Hey everyone, these are the islands I've been to, and this is what I can tell you why I love St. Croix. Hey, I'm going to roll some credits, so please watch them. I'd appreciate it. Please subscribe. It means a lot to me. Bye.